Elladj is representing Canada in a whole new way as a special contributor on the CBC for the Olympics. Elladj grew up dreaming of Olympic glory. He started skating at the age of 6 and was competing within months. Fast forward to age 18, and Elladj was crowned the Canadian Junior National Champion. But as a half Russian, half Guinean man, Elladj didn't always see himself reflected in the world of figure skating. And that started to impact how he felt about the sport and himself. And after narrowly missing his chance to go to the Sochi Olympics in 2014, his career began to take a different shape. Now Elladj is known for these stunning, and when I say stunning, I mean stunning, viral videos he posts of himself skating outdoors on wild ice. He's also become a leader in making figure skating more diverse, accessible, and inclusive. Elladj joins me in the Q studio to talk about his life in skating, the Olympic Games, and what it's like to have found purpose all over again. Welcome to Q.
What an intro.
Do you want me to walk around and follow you and just do that intro for you?
Honestly, that was beautiful. It encapsulates a lot of my life really well. So yeah.
Let's dig deeper into that intro. Let's just get into it. The Olympics right around the corner.
Yeah.
What do you love most about watching the Olympics?
I mean, I think, of course, just like watching these athletes training that have trained for not only their entire lives, but these last 4 years have been specifically, targeted for these Olympics. And so watching these athletes go there and do what they know they can do.
Yeah.
It's just such an incredible feeling. Being an athlete myself, I know what it's like to train so hard and then have all of that pressure to have to deliver in this one moment. And then when that does happen for you, it's just one of the most incredible feelings you can have, I think, as a human being. But also just hearing all the different stories, what people have been through to get here, and what they've had to overcome, the challenges. I think this is such a story about athletes, but I think it's so much about the human behind the athlete.
You know what I love about this is that you have that insider perspective. So when we're listening to you, we're going to hear something. We're going to hear something that comes from a truly deep place of true authenticity. Not to say that other commentators aren't authentic, but this is something different. So I want to get into your story. You started skating at 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Was the dream always the Olympics?
Yeah, basically from the moment I started skating, it's always been Olympic champion.
Really?
And nothing less. Because my mom being Russian, she was a figure skater when she was young in Russia. And obviously skating is such a huge sport in Russia.
Right.
And, when you skate or you do a sport in that part of the world, you do it to be the best. And you don't do it just for fun. And if your goal is not to win, then you're wasting your time. That's kind of like the mentality that was instilled in me right away. As soon as I started skating. Of course, my first few years, were just playful, outside with my mom. And I remember these days as just like something that I just enjoyed doing with my mom. But then as soon as I started competing around the age of six and a half, it was all about just that, being the best.
Does that leave room for joy in the sport?
No. It robbed me almost immediately of the joy I felt in skating. Because right away I was thrown into competitions, right? And so the stress, the pressure, and then like you're pushing yourself and you're trying to land jumps and you're falling all the time. And I remember as a kid, there's a lot of that I didn't enjoy. I remember showing up at competitions and, hoping that we'd come too late, because then that way I wouldn't have to compete and so I didn't handle that really well as a kid. But I think as time went on, obviously things shifted quite a bit. But very early age, there's a lot that I did to try and convince my mom not to skate.
This is not the thing.
Yeah. I would hide my skates in the closet and I'd tell my mom I'd lost them. I have actually one time forgotten my skates like on the bus and they were gone forever. And I promise I didn't do it on purpose. My mom till this day thinks I did it on purpose, but I swear I didn't. And so, I faced a lot of challenges almost immediately.
So what clicked for you in terms of making that change, going from the kid who wants to leave his skates on the bus, to the kid that is ready for competition. What was it that switched in your soul?
Part of it was, around the age of 10, 11 years old, I started landing jumps. Kids my age weren't landing just yet. I started winning competitions, and I started to set goals for myself. Like, I want to land this triple jump before this age. I want to land that jump before that age. And I kept hitting these targets, and I started to develop this passion for jumping. I loved, pushing myself in that way. And as a kid, I was very athletic, and I had a lot of energy. ADHD, but it was a great output for me because I could just skate and jump and throw myself in things. And I really developed this passion for jumping and wanting to push myself in that way. And so that's when it started to change a little bit, where I started to see that, okay, maybe I can do this, and maybe this is something that I could be successful at. And so at that age, it started to shift. It didn't stay like that for forever, for the rest of my career. But between the ages of 12 and I want to say 18, 19, all the way until I was like maybe early 20s, it was really that focus, like jumps and then results and competitions and winning competitions and all of that.
At some point, though, because figure skating is judged not just on the jumps and execution, but there's the artistic components, there is the performance, there is interpretation, there is all those things that have us completely mesmerized, and the artistry of all of it. So when did you realize that artistic part was also speaking to you? When
I was becoming like a teenager, I was really starting to go deep into like, hip hop music and rap and R&B and
very common in skating.
Right? We see it everywhere. But it was really like I started to watch a lot of breakdance videos and guys doing hip hop dances, and that really started to speak to me at that age. And I wanted to bring that out into my skating, but yeah, it just wasn't what skating at the time was ready for. And so, for a long time, I was, having to neglect or suppress this part of myself in order to kind of fit into a mold. But I always had this want and this need to want to express myself authentically. And we always kind of found ways to do it, but it was never satisfying enough.
Right.
And truly, I did everything to fit into that mold, because when you look at the sport of figure skating, and you look at, in any sport really, you look at the people that are at the top. And if you're a young athlete, you want to emulate these people because you know that they're the most successful people in your sport. So you want to do the same thing. And a lot of that, a lot of those skaters were, white or European, and, they had a very different style than what I was used to, or even what I wanted to express on the ice. But I conformed. I decided to follow that path and fit into that mold. And so, I remember making a conscious decision to change the music that I listen to, change the way that I dress, change the way that I show up in the sport to fit more of that narrative in order to find success in the sport. And that also came when I started to make these shifts. I was winning competitions.
Right.
I got the reward that I was looking for, but I was neglecting a pretty important part of myself.
That's the thing. That's the key right there, right? Because it's not just that you're conforming, but the other side of it is that you're suppressing something.
You're leaving a piece of yourself somewhere else.
That's not a good time.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, like, that is not, but at the same time, what's happening is you're being rewarded.
Exactly.
For suppressing.
Yeah. And so you just keep going. You keep going until you can't anymore. And for me, it really started to shift, when I saw, for the first time in front of me, live in person, a black male figure skater. His name was Maxime Billy-Fortin.
Okay.
He was from Quebec City. Oh man, every time I speak about it, I just have this weight that keeps lifting from inside of me whenever I recollect that moment, because up until that point, I was like trying to do things but kind of not, and trying to hide but trying to be myself and kind of not, and just like keep going back and forth, and this internal battle and this internal like resistance to what I wanted to do. And so, you know, when I saw him skate, it was just so authentically raw and real. And you know, he was doing all the technical jumps, which was great, but he was skating to like this hip hop song, and you know, he was popping on the ice, and he was like expressing himself in a way that was so grounded in something so real that it just shook me in my core. And from that moment on, it just really started to bring it back up to my awareness that like I have to allow myself to be seen in this way. You know, it like started to open the door for me in believing that, you know what, maybe this is the path that I need to take regardless of how it's going to be received. And so slowly at that point, I started to show up more and more for myself. But it took a very, very long time. And it wasn't until I went to Africa with my dad for the first time that it really started to crack. But that, I'd say that moment was definitely the beginning of things shifting for me from a perspective of like, who do I want to be on the ice?
Right. And what does it mean to make that shift in terms of your personal development? Because I'm going to go back to 2014, Sochi Olympic Trials.
Yeah.
You're 24 years old, young man, your hope, the dream, as you said, from the age of 6 onward, is to go to the Olympics. And plus, they're in Russia.
Yeah.
Like, how perfect.
Going back home.
Going back home.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You didn't make it.
Yeah.
You came fourth, just like inches away. So after chasing that dream for so long, how did you manage to cope with the disappointment?
Yeah. That was a really, really difficult time for me. You know, up until that point, things in my career were moving well.
Yeah.
You know, I had that dream of going to the Olympics and being an Olympic champion one day. But in the background, deep in my heart, there were things that had happened that slowly chipped away at my belief in that dream. Part of that was, you know, competing in a sport where, you know, you can do a great performance, land all your jumps, have a standing ovation, and connect with the crowd in a way that, you know, people feel compelled to stand up and cheer for you. You can have a performance like that and not be given, you know, the scores that are deserved.
Because at the end of the day, it's still those judges.
Yeah,
it's subjective, and they decide what.
And so things like that happening over and over again start to slowly chip away at your trust in the sport, your trust in the system, your trust in yourself, your trust in the universe, your trust in everything, right? It starts to chip away at that. And so going into these Olympics, you know, I felt so going into these Olympic trials, I felt confident. I felt like I had what I needed to fulfill this dream. And when it didn't happen, something cracked in me, something very deep that I wasn't fully aware of at the time. But for the first time, I started to question whether this path was going to be mine, whether going to the Olympics or winning the Olympics was going to be part of my journey. And up until that point, my entire identity, my self-worth, who I was completely wrapped in this idea of being an Olympian and being an Olympic champion. And so the thought that started to creep in of like, what if this is not my path, started to deconstruct my understanding of who I am and life and why am I even doing this. And so I battled for a whole year to pick myself back up and try to come back and show up and do the things that I needed to do. But that whole year was I wasn't even in my own body, it felt, you know, throughout that year. And then those next nationals, I had a breakdown basically at nationals, and I had one of the worst competition performances of my life. And that's when things really, really started to crack. And I started to consider stopping, because I didn't know why I was even continuing with this and why I was even skating, because all of the reasons were so external, right? There was nothing, it didn't feel like there was anything from within me that came from me. In all of the reasons why I was skating. And so that's when I decided to take some time away from the sport and visit Africa with my dad.
The split in your story is, Russia and the Olympics and the dream of that is once half of who you are. But you'd perhaps been neglecting the other half of who you are.
Absolutely.
So you take this trip to Guinea. And what happens? Like, tell me about that trip.
Yeah, I mean, my life changes.
Okay.
To put it simply. Up until that point, I hadn't been to Africa. I hadn't met my family out there either. My grandfather, grandmother, uncles, aunt, cousins. And I hadn't connected with the land at all. And so when these nationals happened, it just so happens that at the same time, my grandfather was in a coma, and he was about 98, 99 years old, had been healthy his entire life, but, at a certain age, the body needs to go, So, and so right around the national championships, my dad asked me to come to Africa with him because he wanted to see his father for the last time and wanting his father to meet me at least once in his life. And he came out of the coma, a few days before going to nationals. And my dad told me, I'm going in February, so I would love for you to come. But, at that point, I was still like, well, I got nationals coming up, and then I'll probably have 4 continents coming up, and then world championships. Like I'm busy, I got so much skating and competitions ahead of me. This is what I'm doing. And so I couldn't go. And then, and then nationals happened, and, my season ended right there. And I didn't, at the time, I had a feeling that there was a reason why this was happening. And I could kind of feel it, but it was so subtle that there was a part of me that was also resisting it, because no, technically I should have competed well. I should have gone to 4 contests. I should have gone to Worlds, because that's the path that I'm on. But I knew deep down that there was something a little bit deeper that was calling me somewhere else. And so I called my dad right away, and I was like, I'm going to come. I'm coming with you. And we left a few weeks later. And I got to experience, I got to experience first the magic of Africa, the deeply rooted connection to the people and the land and family members in a way that I had never experienced before. And I got to go there and meet my grandfather and my grandmother and everybody. And I felt a sense of, when I was looking into my grandfather's eyes, I felt a sense of love for who I was as a human being outside of anything that I had done in the sport. He didn't know anything about me outside of,
there was no wins, no losses, no falling short. It was just you.
He was looking straight at me, and I felt an immense sense of love that made me feel like I'm enough without any of these things. And it started to shift something in me. And I sat there, in the village with my dad, where there's no electricity, there's no running water, there's no internet, there's no connection to the outside world. I sat there for weeks just contemplating, my life and what I wanted to do with it, and if I wanted to keep skating. And it became very clear that there was a part of me that I was still pretty much suppressing, that I've been hiding for so long, that I was so ready to explore and to show the world. And I knew that I felt I felt like I had a gift in being able to share myself authentically in a way that made people feel things. And I wanted to, all of a sudden, I just realized that I wanted to explore that more and more. So when I came back into skating, it was with a completely new intention, a new way of being on the ice. And that started this path that I've been on ever since, where I'm only looking to dive deeper into who I am as a human being so I can continue to discover myself and then show up as an artist in the most authentic way possible and share myself in the most vulnerable way for people to be able to experience the human that lives inside of me outside of the sport of figure skating. And that's where everything started to unlock for me. I started to realize that there's this place that I can skate from that's in the heart and not in the ego, not in the mind. And when I tap into this place, it's infinite. I'm connecting to everything and everyone.
And that's what we see when you decide that you're going to take your skating out into the wild and make these beautiful viral videos of yourself on open ice, mountains, sky, you just connecting with us because you don't look like, when you look at figure skating, it's like the figure skaters are in these outfits where you can't connect as just a normal person, like, right? But you are just a guy that's just expressing himself so beautifully out on that open ice.
Thank you.
What does that feel like? Like, what did it feel like? What did it bring you to be out there like that?
So after when I came back from Africa, I still had 4 years left in my competitive career. And every second I spent within that space was spent going deeper and deeper into who I was. And once I retired from competitive skating and started to dive into the world of shows and touring the world, I started to really feel what it feels like to be who you want to be on the ice. But it wasn't until I started skating on wild ice that it truly felt like freedom. You know, when you're out there and you're on ice that's formed by Mother Nature, and there's mountains and the sun and the sky, the wind, the animals, the trees, you feel so deeply one with everything around you that it allows you to tap into something that is just pure freedom. And then being able to do what I love most, move to music that moves me. It feels like I'm all of a sudden transported back to the early 6-year-old me that that hadn't started competing yet, and I was just having fun outside and enjoying himself and just feeling the freedom of what it's like to glide on ice and flow through space effortlessly.
With Drake and Childish Gambino and
All of
whoever
that
you
too.
needed to
Yes.
hear in your ears.
Absolutely.
It just looks like freedom.
Yeah.
It really looks like freedom. But you turned around and said to yourself, I still have work to do in professional figure skating.
Absolutely.
In that competitive world.
Yeah.
Because there's young people that look just like me that have challenges in that world.
Yeah.
What did you see as the accessibility issues in skating for a young Black skater, a young person of color who wants to break into a very white world?
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you see and what did you want to address in this next chapter in your skating life, the advocacy chapter?
The thing with skating is that there's so many layers when it comes to answering the question of, why don't we have more representation in the sport? I think first, not having representation is makes it really hard to increase the representation because so many young kids don't see themselves in the sport, and so choosing that sport is already something that we don't see a lot of when it comes to skaters of color. But then there's all of these barriers of the skating system being rooted in racism in a lot of ways, and systemic racism in the same way that we see in different sports and just in society in general. But skating is an extremely expensive sport as well.
Right.
A lot of kids get priced out of the sport. I mean, there was 100,000 times that I could have been priced out of the sport, and if it wasn't for my parents giving up everything in order for me to skate, I wouldn't be here today. If it wasn't for coaches that were so generous with me and my parents, because they knew we didn't have the means to pay for ice time and equipment and all of these things, all the people that helped us in our careers, in my career, if they wouldn't have been there on my path, I wouldn't be here today. So there's so many things that went the right way for me in order for me to be here today. But we see so many kids get priced out of the sport, and unfortunately a lot of these kids are Black, Indigenous, and skaters of color. And so one of the things that I know is important is how do we alleviate that financial burden for a lot of the skaters that really struggle to be able to afford anything in figure skating. And so, we founded the Skate Global Foundation, which is a foundation that helps with giving out grants to skaters of color to help really alleviate not only that financial burden, but specifically for skaters that have the potential to compete at nationals and the Olympics, so that they could become the representation for their next generation of Black, Indigenous, and skaters of color, because we need that representation there in order to inspire young kids. If you look at, in the 90s with Surya Bonali, like she inspired a whole generation of skaters in France that have been, like you look at Mae Bérénice Meïté, 10-time, I think she's 10-time national champion. And she's from Côte d'Ivoire and Congo, beautiful African woman that has dominated the sport in France for so many years. She was inspired by Surya Bonali. So we need to create these moments of representation for our young generation. And I'm trying to do that in a different way now with social media, because I feel like there's a space where we can be celebrated by being who we truly are, and showing up in that way, versus when I was young, and I know a lot of skaters of my generation, previous generations, believe that being ourselves would only hurt us, right? And so being able to create a space where we can show these skaters that you can be yourself and you can be celebrated is truly, truly important, because the last thing that we want is to bring in young Black, Indigenous, and skaters of color, but then they also then completely conform to the system. And so we also need to work with judges and national sport organizations to create more education on what it's like to have a sport that looks more diverse, because this person expressing themselves is different than that person. And how do you recognize both as being authentic and being real, and not diminish one because it doesn't look like the other thing, right? And so I think education is such an important tool in being able to create a sport that's more accepting of all people. And I think Skate Canada has been doing a really good job at that. And hopefully we can continue to push forward with this so that we can see a much more colorful sport in the future.
Love it. And it's very cool that you've decided to put yourself in a position of leadership to be a part of that, because you know it, right? You know it.
We've experienced it for sure.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to your CBC coverage of the Winter Games. I know a lot of kids will be watching as well.
Yeah.
What do you hope that they think about when they see you on screen covering the games?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is I hope they can see themselves in me and think I can be there too. I think that's a really important part of what I do. But I'm also hoping that they can hear a different perspective of what figure skating can be. I think what I'll be sharing a lot of during the CBC coverage is just my take, my lens, what I see in the sport and what I see in people that I think is going to continue to further the mission that we're on. And I'm excited to share that. I think it's such a beautiful opportunity, and it's such a privilege to be able to, speak to Canada in that way and inform people of the way that I've seen skating and the way that I perceive it now. And I think it's going to be beautiful. We're going to see a lot of magical skating, and I'm so glad I get to share that.
Well, thank you for coming here to share all of this. I cannot wait for you to explain to me what a triple toe loop
I got you.
is.
I got you.
Thank you for
Yeah.
you're doing God's work. You really are. Elladj, thank you so much for being
Thank you.
here, and have fun at the Olympics with the Olympics. It's going to be great. It's going to be great to watch you.
Thank you so much.